after the USA's 1-0 win over Mexico in what we should call a friendly, but we know it's anything but when it comes to those two teams. We have Brian McBride in to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly from that game. Let's start off, Brian, with the good. Who impressed you the most?
Well, I think you got to look at the whole camp, and I look at the whole camp, and it actually translates right into this last game against Mexico. Tyler Adams, of course, the goal scorer, but more importantly, someone who seemed very comfortable on the ball, without the ball. His commitment to close down space is there, but he understands the game. And when I say that, I don't mean just having a soccer brain. He knows when he needs to cover for a player. He knows when he needs to fill a space to open up a passing lane. And that showed yesterday. I'd add in, I think, Zack Steffen has had a great camp. And in the sense of, sure, he made a bad decision coming out and sliding in on getting a handball outside the penalty area, whether or not he actually used his hand. Those situations, I think, you learn the more you get into. But if you talk about what you want from your goalkeeper, making saves, being positionally correct, distributing the ball really well, he did all of those. He ticked all those boxes. And lastly, the biggest surprise for me has been Julian Green. Somebody who really looked on the outskirts for a long time after playing in a World Cup coming up basically as a teenager. You get to see there's some quality there. And the quality is that he's very comfortable in tight spaces. He came in, for for Weston McKennie when he wasn't necessarily ready, but his first touch was excellent. He understood that we needed somebody to hold the ball up, to also not even hold the ball up, but take the ball side on and move it forward. And so I'd say those three players did very well during the game.
All right, well, now that was good. Let's get to the ugly, because like I said, it was a friendly, but we know it is anything but when it comes to those teams. We saw that Matt Miazga was involved in a little spat, and after the game, Angel Saldivar has some very interesting words for Miazga and the USA. He says, quote, "They tried to play a dirty game, and we honestly don't think that's how you should play." That's very rich coming from Mexico. Brian, did you see anything in this game that was unwarranted that probably you weren't used to when you would play against Mexico?
I would say that it was a pretty tame game in the sense that until the point where Matt Miazga sort of was insinuating that.
That's expected. Is he just sour grapes now?
No, that's mind games. That's not dirty. I didn't see any tackles that were dirty. Believe me, I've played in games versus Mexico where my feet were stepped on. There was, you get close and they'd give you a little ding to the private area. Those I would call are dirty. This was just more of a mental game, and they lost it. And for both sides, I think it's an opportunity to understand, listen, there's going to be times when you may be wound up, but you got to hold your composure. The U.S. did a good job of that. Mexico did not, and basically it probably cost them the game.
All right, thanks so much to Brian McBride. Definitely useful games for the young U.S. men's national team against Brazil and now against their arch rivals, Mexico. It's been two pretty decent outings against Brazil and Mexico for a young and changing U.S. men's national team. We've got Brian McBride here to tell us who's impressed him the most. In order, let's start off with number 3, Brian.
Sure. Number 3, bit of a surprise to me. Julian Green, very much on the outskirts looking in, called back into the national team. And he's showed a lot of composure and poise. Now, on top of that, in a situation where yesterday we needed a player that you could play to the ball to the feet, get out of tight spaces, and transition, I thought he did an excellent job.
What about number 2?
Number 2, a player that we're looking for, because U.S., of course, is known for goalkeepers. And Zack Steffen has done extremely well, being thrown in the deep end. Certainly, probably wants that decision to coming out of the penalty area yesterday, but you look at a goalkeeper, you want a goalkeeper that makes saves, that's good in the air and commanding in the box, and distributes the ball well, and he's done all of that.
Shaka Hislop would applaud you for showing the goalkeepers some love, but there can only be one, so who's impressed you the most and why?
I think it's pretty obvious, and it's not just because he scored the goal yesterday. I think he's been very good throughout. His career as a youth national team player has been exceptional, and now he's made this transition to MLS, been completely one of the better players of Red Bulls, but also in the national team he's become a leader. He covers tons of ground. He has a great understanding of the game, and he's a great connector in between the defense to the forward, and he'll make the penalty area.
All right, Tyler Adams, go ahead and brush your shoulders off because you have impressed Brian McBride enough to be his #1. All right, thanks so much, Brian. Always a pleasure to continue tracking the U.S. men's national team, to keep it here at ESPN FC.